Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of Random Thoughts, Some Useful, where we have real conversations about mindset, healing, and faith. I'm your host, Jen, and today we're continuing our discussion over suicide awareness and prevention. So today we're back for another episode with my bestie, Regina of Regina Roche Consulting. Today, she'll be sharing invaluable insights on suicide from a therapist's perspective. Together, we'll explore how to recognize the signs of suicidal thoughts, how to support someone in crisis, and what steps you can take if you're struggling with negative thoughts yourself. This episode is about breaking the silence, offering hope, and providing actionable tools and resources to help those in need. Whether you're here for a loved one or for yourself, this conversation could be one that makes a difference. So stay with us, share this episode, and let's dive into this life-saving discussion. Anyway, so I have the intro music, and then I have my intro to the podcast, like what my podcast is about, and like how you can find me on social and that kind of stuff. And then I have another recording that starts after that timed and all that kind of stuff that talks about the podcast, the actual episode, and what it's going to be about, like an introduction to it and the introduction to the guest and that kind of thing. So that's what I'll do for us today too. But so instead of like introducing you now and going through we will go through that today because I think it's really important for us to establish our credentials and that kind of thing. And of course I want to, you have a social presence. My other guests so far, other than Jake, hasn't, you know what I mean? So I want to make sure that we definitely mention that today and that kind of thing. But, so I do that and then start have the podcast, and then I go through and I edit out anything that I need to edit out. I've learned how to take snippets out. Right. And then once I get all that put together, then I go and put the intro music on the end, or the outro music, but it's the same music, on the ending. And then I go through and adjust all the levels of all the different tracks. So each of those that I talked about are a different track, and so there ends up being like 5 or 6 tracks in there, and then you can adjust the music volume and the volume to the voice, whatever, for each individual one. Yeah, and you can do it to where it'll like start really, really low, and it'll just gradually go. Like you can just adjust it wherever you want. Yeah,
that's really neat.
Yeah, and so there are places where like I cackle a lot. Anyway, so I cackle a lot, and there have been places where I've had to like literally lower the volume on my cackle so that I don't blow everyone's ears out.
I've never heard your laughter sound like cackling to me.
Oh gosh, sometimes it can for sure to me, but anyways.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if you're ready, let's get right into it. I've been recording, but we can edit any of that out. But I think, why not? I kind of liked it to just organically, get into it kind of thing.
I am on board.
So, okay, so like I said, we'll go ahead and today we'll introduce you because I do think it's definitely important that we establish your credentials because of the topic today. I had reached out because I wanted to continue the subject of suicide awareness. September, I think it's 10th, is National Suicide Awareness Day. And, my personal stories with suicide,
yes.
Not just people close to me, but my own battle of thoughts and things.
Right.
And so I just, I started it with my brother, and we were kind of bringing a lot of awareness and light to statistics of different demographics and, those kinds of things. And I said in the middle of it, I was like, okay, so this is great. We're bringing awareness to it. But I really feel like the next step is we need to, along with the theme of my podcast, is empowering people. So now we need to give them the tools that they need to be able to overcome that kind of stuff. Or even like myself, I have spent countless hours online on the phone with the Suicide Awareness Hotline, talking about how do I help my cousin through this, or my, definitely friends. I've had so many experiences with suicide, right, and helping people through it. So that has been taxing,
to say the least.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I think that there's a huge piece of just talking about how to even, help somebody going through it. Of course, I immediately, I'm always like, I'm not credentialed for this. This is out of my scope. Please, I refer everyone to you. Please find therapy. And I say all the time, like jokingly, but not, like I wish that people around me would get into therapy so maybe I could get out.
That is so true, and it's true for lots of people.
Because I've been in therapy my whole life trying to figure out how to deal with the world, and sometimes very close to me. You know what I mean?
Yes,
so,
yes.
and it has been such a tool for me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and especially since meeting you. I mean, you have just opened my world to so much beyond therapy. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like life
therapy.
Enrichment. I mean, it's been way more than, yeah, absolutely. You just have enriched my life in so many ways. I mean, not just mentally, but just our being able to spend time together like we're able to do today.
Yes.
You know what I mean? How enriching that is.
These are my favorite moments.
It's like, it's part of my self-care to get to spend an ample amount of time with you and just having organic conversations like this about how to heal the world and how to heal ourselves, because we both have been through so many things.
Absolutely. And we have talked many times walking away thinking, I sure wished we had recorded that conversation.
Yes.
So it's good that we're finally getting started.
Right? We finally were like, okay, the next time we're definitely going to do it. And then I reached out this week and I was like, okay, this is definitely what I want the episode to be about. So if you would just kind of start us off with like your background, what inspired you to become a licensed professional counselor, and if you kind of have any personal professional experiences or anything that kind of shaped your approach to suicide awareness or prevention in general.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. This is a blast. I'm having a blast already. My name is Regina Pereira, and I have been practicing for 34 years. And my very first job out of the chute after graduation was working with an agency that provided services to domestic violence and sexual assault. So I have been focused on trauma work my entire career, and I love it. Absolutely love it. It is my niche. Currently launching a new business called Regina Roche Consulting, LLC, and I'm focused there on narcissistic abuse recovery programs. So anyone interested in that could reach out and get some more information.
Perfect.
So I'm currently in private practice, almost 5 years now, and I am just happy to be here and happy to share my thoughts. And in regards to suicidal ideation and suicide concerns, it is a really tough issue when it comes to this kind of a situation. The families suffer so much, and what it does is cause a lot of times a domino effect, because if someone in the family has died by suicide, and we don't say committed anymore because they haven't committed a crime, but they've died by suicide, it literally gives permission to the rest of the family, anyone close in your circle, permission to die by deletion. And that is a real thing. I've seen it over and over again, patterns throughout my career, and it is a super concern. I've had someone in my office who said, hey, Auntie so-and-so did it, cousin so-and-so did it, my best friend did it, maybe I should just join the crowd. And that was one of my toughest cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are they doing today? Are they much better?
I don't have contact with them today. This was absolute years ago. Probably in the neighborhood of at least 15 years ago. So I haven't seen that person since. Many people did follow me from the Chickasaw Nation, which is where I used to work. But yeah, I hadn't seen her again. But it's a real concern in this scenario.
It's interesting now that you say that, like were you able to gain more of her perspective on how that was kind of maybe a considering option for her, even though these others had made that choice? So, because In my own experience, it was our baby cousin that succeeded. I've had multiple friends and coworkers and family that have tried,
Right.
but this particular one, she had tried several times, and this time she made it definitive. And that has been such a hard thing for their family. And I can't imagine, I mean, even though I know that there are members of the family that felt exactly, very similar to her, which we've talked about this a lot, like it doesn't matter what a person is going through, what the details of that are, they're still going through it no matter what. They're still having the same types of feelings that others have with different experiences that are traumatic, right? No matter what the details are. So although I know that there are life experiences that are not ideal, that keep people that, at least depressed, at least maybe having thoughts of my family would be better off without me, or, I'm tired, I'm done, I'm so tired, I want things to be different, I don't know where to begin, I don't know what to, those kind of things. So anyway, it's interesting to me to hear you say that you've had experience with someone that has a lot of that in their family, but they are still considering that as a real option. You know what I mean? Given the impact that it has on the family. So that.
Well, fortunately, by the time we ended services, she had pulled out of that.
Great.
And was living a very different perspective, and she put in the work to do it.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And that's what it takes.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, the work to do it, because that is so intimidating to people. And I know, for one, you and I have talked about this a lot, but I think it's worth bringing to light. The religious, what is it, connotations or whatever it is that kind of keeps people. I kind of lost my train of thought there. What were we just talking about?
Well, I think if you were headed to where I think you were headed, which is interesting because that's where my thoughts were going as well, about the religious overtones of what it means to delete thyself from their perspective. And that's where it came from originally, a sin. And then it became a legal thing when they made it illegal. So like folks with a life insurance policy, if they deleted themselves, then it nullified the
policy,
the policy.
The terms that it would void the policy. Yeah.
Yes, which is really quite ridiculous, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But whatever. And so, that's it. It's not that. And I will tell you, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because moments before you said something, my thoughts were about Spirit's perspective of suicide.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with Anana one afternoon, and this was a few years ago. And she said that Spirit's perspective on suicide or deletion is that it's just one more avenue home. It just simply means that someone feels like they've bitten off more than they can chew. And they've decided to go ahead and return home and maybe start again, or maybe take a rest and heal. And that's all it means. I say to people, there are 8 billion people on this planet. That means that there's 8 billion individual journeys. Mm. And each one of those journeys is very unique to the journeyer. Mm-hmm. So I love Neil Donald Walsh's perspective of there is no right, there is no wrong, no good, no bad. There's no mistakes, there's no coincidences. You are here to organically live a life as a human. And the whole trip is about remembering your truth and living your best life. And that your destiny, by design, is prosperity. But it's up to you to learn how to be in your truth, know your worth, and manifest it. Mm. And if someone is here and they just can't handle the heat in the kitchen anymore, deletion is an option, and it's not something you're judged for.
Right. So Okay, let's talk about kind of walking us through a person that is reaching out to you,
Mm-hmm.
having suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's first maybe talk about understanding the signs, what they kind of the stigmas around them, maybe therapeutic perspective, role of mental health disorders, that kind of thing. Um, so that we can, of course, I think what comes to mind is the meme of, oh my goodness, the guy's name? He's the actor, really funny, that
Chris Rock.
killed himself.
Oh,
He's so
Williams, Robin
Yes,
Williams.
Robin Williams. Okay, and so there's a meme that goes around with his face on it, and it says this, that something along the lines of oftentimes the saddest people are the happiest people, or the
Mm-hmm.
funniest people, or they're the ones that are making others happy, those kind of things. And so that kind of it reminds me of that. It's like I feel like we need to, I guess, like I said, let's talk about kind of the warning signs. What kind of things to look for from an outsider's perspective that
Okay.
we may not realize could be kind of a telling sign. And then also like when to always take somebody seriously whenever they confide in you about having, thoughts, that kind of thing. But when to
Mm-hmm.
know, when do I call, when do I, like I said, I've spent countless hours on the phone, and I don't actually feel like I got that much help,
Right.
other than being able at the time to vent and express what I was going through. I didn't get a whole lot of skills
Mm-hmm.
to help that person. So again, just from that perspective, when to know how to, or when is the proper time to, I guess, intervene and even call for help, or what are the steps, what should we do first, when do we know what to do next, that kind of stuff, if you have any guidance on that.
Sure, sure, sure. When it comes to some of your questions, the answer is you don't. You can't. There's not any answers. Every situation is absolutely different, so you have to take everyone seriously. But what I see in my practice, and trust me, I have talked to a lot of people with deletion thoughts, and it really boils down to the majority of them, the largest majority of them. It's not about really truly wanting to die, it's about wanting to take the pain away.
Mm.
So here's a hard, cold, very difficult truth, and that is this: those out there who are truly deletion minded, you're not going to know it. They've been hiding behind a mask, just like in the case of Robin Williams being the funny man. You're hiding behind a mask, and you keep up the pretenses until the very last moment. And there are no signs, there are no hints. There might be a few little bitty flags here and there, but generally nobody could probably pick up on those, you know, uh, only with hindsight. Now, instincts are good. If you have a funny feeling about something, follow up with your gut feelings. Trust your instincts. But from the cases I've heard of, where folks just deleted out of the blue, everybody was convinced that this person was living their best life, one of the happiest, most stable people they knew, very successful in their job or their business. I'm thinking of a doctor down in Dallas. I'll just tell you the story briefly. But this was a friend of one of my clients, and she was devastated by this man's death. And they found him deleted by gunshot in his car. And it was out of nowhere. He was married with children, very successful doctor, which was part of the problem. So there was lots of resources, lots of money, lots of wonderful healthcare benefits, beautiful babies, all the things. But he was being forced, and I'm not sure who the enforcers were, whether this was the hospital he worked for. I'm kind of thinking. only makes sense. But he was being forced to perform sex change operations on minors, like as young as 12. And he got to the point where he just couldn't stomach it anymore. And that's what led to his demise. So, but all that is to say that if someone is truly in deletion mode, you're not going to know it, because they know not to let it be seen. They are absolutely determined, and that this is the way it's going to be. This is my plan. I'm sticking to it, and nobody's going to know but me until it's over with. So there is no signs when it comes to that kind of situation. So the other part of the population that is more vocal about it, those are the folks who don't really want to die. They just want the pain to end. And they're actually screaming for help. Their thoughts are their way of screaming for help.
Okay.
Yes.
So what's the best way to help them?
You can't be afraid to talk about it. You know, when I was in college, of course, I loved the crisis intervention classes, you know, the deletion classes, all those kinds of classes were my favorite. I knew I was going to end up in trauma. Well, it was writing an English paper on the subject of sexual assault and rape that led me to having an interest and a passion for becoming a trauma specialist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where was I on the first thought, though?
Well, what can we do to help them?
Oh,
Square one.
So I'm in college. I'm in this deletion class, and one of the things that she said in the very early days of our starting that semester was that you cannot be afraid to talk about deletion. You cannot be afraid to talk about it. And I knew in that moment I don't have any fear of talking about it. So the first thing you want to do is to get it out on the table. You know, if this is a truth, no matter what perspective you look at it through, no matter what subject you're addressing, truth and transparency is always the key to the universe. So the first thing that I say to a person, especially a younger person, is, are you having thoughts of wanting to kill yourself? You know, and I get straightforward and very direct. You have to. And then you get when you are truthful, when you have that attitude of truthfulness and knowing how to hold space for someone, then they can be more truthful with you. And they really don't want to die. They just want the pain to end. So they're much more forthcoming with where they're at.
So it's really more about having those taking the time to connect and have meaningful conversations with people that
absolutely.
And when they come to mind, I mean, like you said, intuitively, people know one way or another, you know, whether you shut it down and put it in the back of your mind and call yourself crazy or what. I mean, listen to those things, because those are intuitive hits about, hey, maybe this person is having a hard time. You should reach out to them.
That's exactly true. I mean, how many times have you been thinking about someone you're close to or someone you care about, and 30 minutes later your phone's ringing or a text is coming through from them? We are all connected spiritually. We are all connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so
the first thing is, don't be afraid to talk about it. And the second thing is get to the details. You know, so do you have a plan? Do you see yourself imagining yourself being able to complete your plan? What is the plan? How would you perform this? Do you have the means to do that? You know, for example, if they say that they want to use medication, well, do you have medication? Access to medication, access to a weapon, access to the means? And if the answer is yes, then, you know, if they don't have to be hospitalized, which I have only hospitalized 2 people in my life, and that is one who was drinking, so I couldn't let her drive, but she was willing to voluntarily go. And 2, she was 16 and she said, if I leave this office, I will be dead. So I had to call Dad, and we had to cancel the rest of my clients and wait for Dad to get there to take her to the hospital. So outside of those times, they've either been voluntarily ready to go to the hospital, and they confirmed by calling me that they're there and checking in and getting intake, But the rest of the times I've been able to deal with it therapeutically. And this is why, is because they really want the help.
Right.
And so you get the deets, how are you going to do it? Why are you going to do it? Can you see yourself doing it? How does it feel to talk to me about this right now?
Yeah.
Right. And you jump off into the conversation. If I've said it once, I've said it hundreds of times. It is not the kind of therapy a therapist uses. It is the connection and the relationship that heals. So if you can get there with them and share space with them and provide safety in that space and be open and vulnerable as far as a therapist should, there's boundaries there, professional boundaries that we should all be aware of, and allow the process to unfold. Mm. They will be ready to spill it by then.
So let's pivot for a second on finding a therapist. How does a person find help? Okay, so we've established it's a need.
Yes.
We've established that I cannot help you. This is definitely beyond our connecting conversations. I think you would really benefit from some extra help. How do we find you besides you? Because not everybody will be able to find you. Not everybody's lucky as I am.
As of this week, completely full. So
how do we
there
find
would be a waiting list, but
a good therapist? Where's the place to start?
The one thing that I hear from a tremendous number of people who reach out to me is that my website spoke to them. And I started out I just put my whole website together myself organically. Mm-hmm. And I started out after my intro by asking questions. And the questions came from my heart. They were my own questions about my own life.
Right.
And so my authenticity, which is my favorite word in the dictionary, is authenticity. My authenticity coming through those words and my energy coming through those words and my invitation to become outrageously authentic in order to reach your truth spoke to people. So get on Psychology Today, read the profiles, and get a feeling for who you're talking to. I do not offer initial consultations or free consultations because if I did that, that's all I'd be doing. Mm-hmm. So I set people up with an initial intake. If they decided intake that I'm not a good fit, that's perfectly fine. No therapist should ever get their feelings hurt over something like that. But get a feel for what you're reading from the profiles online. And then when you reach out, always pay attention to your experience. For example, the other day I realized, or this was a few weeks ago, I realized that I had missed one of my Psychology Today emails from a client reaching out, and I had spots open. But it had been some weeks. I missed it completely. So I reached back out and I said, I am so sorry for the late response. I completely missed this email back on blah, blah date, period. And then I just, put my standard letter in there and she became a client. But, so customer service, how fast do they return your call? I mean, a lot of times people hear from me same day. And I'm available to people via text between sessions. I can't take on a lot of phone calls, but I can always return a text. I mean, and so, and then how is the process? What was the intake process like? How did you feel in your initial conversation? Did you feel safe? Did you feel like this was a good environment? Did you feel like you had the right to ask questions? One of the things that I say to people in my opening spiel, I tell people I'm loud and proud of it. I'm going to cut you off because if I'm inspired to say something, I don't want to forget. So I'll jump in. I will get sarcastic. I'll pop off a joke. We're going to laugh in our sessions, but I always promise them the truth as I see it at the end of the day, and I'm going, and that I find this work sacred. Mm-hmm. This is sacred work to me, and it's near and dear to my heart. That's when they know they're safe in this room.
Yeah.
And I, but I will also be quite real with people. I am gonna tell you the truth as I see it, whether you want to hear it or not.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to dealing with deletion issues.
So I want to talk more about like what to expect in therapy. Like, what can you expect from like? Of course, I've invested a lot of time over the years, and I am grateful that I have had the therapist that I have had up
Mm,
till you even. You know what I mean? They've brought
mm-hmm.
me to we talk about that all the time, our experiences and how we should be grateful for all of them, no matter
Yeah,
how
yeah.
they're colored, right? But I also want to. Is there anything specifically that has really shaped your approach to self-deleting thoughts and those kind of things? Like, I know you said you took a lot of classes and different things, um, but was there an experience? Was there some type of teacher, information, something specifically? I know probably not. Knowing you, everything is intuitive. It's very in the
It's
moment.
very
It's
in the moment.
very
It's very intuitive, but I've just really, I mean, this work, I was born to do this work.
yeah,
And I don't mean to sound boastful or braggy, but all those kinds of instincts come very naturally to me.
yeah.
And it has come out in my Akashic record that I have always been a healer. So no wonder, I mean, the frequencies are in my field and have been for centuries, obviously, and for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And so, but it really comes down to the authenticity piece
Mm-hmm.
is that I'm going to, by not being afraid myself of using the terms, of getting real, of putting it on the table, of taking the lead, then that makes it a safe space for them to be open and honest about what's going on with them.
And then you can, at that point, establish a plan of care, if you will.
Yes, yes,
Like,
yes.
okay,
That's exactly right.
this is
The first thing I do is get them to commit to safety, right?
safety
So
plan.
we can do this one of two ways. Are you at the place where you feel like you need 24-hour care? Do we need to hospitalize you? And I let them be empowered by being a part of that decision. And I say to them, it's my opinion that you have what it takes to deal with this yourself with my help.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually increase the number of times that they get seen. Um, and they know where they're at. And again, they don't really want to die. They just want the help.
Right.
So they're pretty open and pretty honest with me. And they'll say, yeah, I can commit to safety. Then we go into safety planning and I literally type up a contract that they sign and carry with them. And I keep a copy and they must carry it with them in their purse, in their wallet, in their, whatever, tape it to your mirror, whatever. And I tell you what, I have a client who to this day carries her contract in her wallet.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah. So they know they're being supported. They know I'm in their corner. I'm going to give them all kinds of tools and things to practice, things to think about, things to focus on.
So let's talk about, I guess, putting it in the universe and getting clear. I mean, this is now that we're talking about, I mean, we apply this to the way that we approach our careers, we approach our relationships, those kind of things. So apply the same thing to finding a therapist, put it out in the universe,
Yes.
what you're looking for, what
Yes.
you're, and just trust that you'll be connected with the
Yeah.
right person.
And what I started to say a while ago, and I let myself forget, was that when you are sitting with that therapist for the first time, first of all, has your experience been congruent?
Right.
Have they been customer service minded? And when you're sitting with that person, how does it feel? How do they feel? What's the environment like? How do you feel in the space? Is the furniture comfortable? Just really be present with yourself and notice your experience.
Mm.
If something feels a little off, it might be best to go back to Psychology Today.
So, okay. So maybe I've already invested 6 months with this person and I just don't want to go through finding another therapist. How can I approach? I just don't feel like I'm getting out of this what I was looking for. Is there something different that
Well,
we can do? Is
I
there
I caution you on one of those kinds of moves, and here's why. Now, again, I'm not trying to be boastful. I'm not trying to be braggy. I'm just going to demonstrate how I um, handle things professionally, which should be the way every therapist handles things. And a client should be able to come to the table and say, I really don't feel like the direction of where we're going is good for me. Is there some other options we can explore?
I love that
I would love
terminology.
that.
Yeah.
I would love that. And I would accept that. And if I couldn't meet their expectation, I would find a referral for them and glad to do it. Because I truly believe that if someone has come to sit in front of me, it's a divine appointment. And if it's not a good fit, I want them to go find their good fit.
Right.
But unfortunately, which is why I said proceed with caution, unfortunately, there's a lot of therapists out there who take those kinds of things very personally. So you have the right to explore that with your therapist, but if you get some sort of reaction, there's your sign that you need to move on.
Right. Right.
And I've heard some horror stories.
Oh, yeah. I could tell you some horror stories.
You've told me your horror stories.
Oh, unfortunately. But again, it brings perspective. So I think if we can go back to that emotional control portion of it, if you can kind of step outside of your body and just experience it without judging it and just kind of observe, then you can not torture yourself through the healing process.
Bingo. Boom shakalaka.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about overcoming negative thoughts. So a person that, say they're not actively having those thoughts, but they are a person that does suffer from depression. They get up every day. Oh my gosh, I did not want to do this again. I've been there. I've been that person. Whether it's
I have to.
mentally problems going on, relationship, physical pain, there's all the things, right? So how can we first breaking the negative thought cycle, building resilience, and, if there's any resources, those kind of things that you could suggest that would be really, really effective, like efficiently. You know me, I filter everything through efficiency. So
no, I got you, and I'm hearing you, and I'm tracking. I irritate the snot out of my clients at times over 2 words, and they will have this huge amount of chaos and hot mess that they've been dealing with. And my first question to them is, what have you been doing for self-care as you've been dealing with this miserable situation? And 9 times out of 10, it's, oh, well,
what is that?
that went on the back burner. I haven't had time to do that. I forgot all about it or whatever, which is normal. It's normal. We all do that. We all, we get into our groove and we have a routine and we do our meditations and we do our self-care and we go to therapy, and then life happens and knocks us off our track and we forget about self-care because we're in crisis mode, and it's almost, you feel like you have to start all over.
So number 1, breathing technique. That's something you taught me initially.
Yes, and I love any one of the ones that you can look up. But my favorite is the box breathing, and that is where you literally, I have the kids draw their box in the air, but it's inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And you do that 2, 3, 4 times. I love that one.
That's great.
You've got to get centered in the moment.
Gratitude. That's another one that I somewhere have collected. Just, everything that you can see, naming it as what you're grateful for.
Yes.
And all of these things bring us into the now.
Yes.
Center us.
Yes.
Get us out of all of the distractions and the chaos and the things so that we can then rationally approach making decisions and processing.
Absolutely. And connecting with yourself. And the 2 words that I referred to a few minutes ago was self-love. And I sometimes really make a big deal about it, and I'll say, okay, I've got 2 words for you. Do you want to get you a pencil and a piece of paper?
So, okay, real quick. Self-love and self-care. 2 different things.
Yeah. You do want to achieve the other.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what self-care looks like, because that's, such a trend right now.
Yes.
And, it's such a trend to, oh, I'm getting a pedicure today, self-care day, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But it doesn't have to cost money. It can literally be 5 minutes of meditation.
Well, 5 minutes of meditation, but what I
Contemplation.
say, and contemplation, absolutely, and reflection. What I say to people is that what is the most self-caring thing you can do is to create a culture of self-care. Not unlike an overweight person cannot go on the right diet, exercise, lose all their weight, reach their goal, and then turn around and eat the way they used to again. It's a lifestyle change that you have to embrace in order for lasting change to ensue. The same is true for your mental health and self-care. And so if you think about yourself, even, and I have folks that will come in and say, oh my goodness, this bomb went off and that bomb went off and I've just been swamped. I don't care how swamped you get. It's free to have an attitude of self-care and have it be the first and foremost thing on your mind. And so even if it is as brief as turning away from your computer, consciously being aware of your body and your stress, taking in 2 or 3 nice big deep breaths, noticing and releasing any tension in your body, and that's a whole 30-second break that you can take that doesn't cost anybody anything.
Right.
And it's building awareness and building a culture of putting yourself first. That is what's crucial. Radical self-care leads to radical self-love and acceptance unconditionally.
Which trickles down.
Correct.
A meme that comes to mind recently, I saw parents will talk about how they will die for their children.
Yes.
They will do anything to, no, absolutely no question. They will die for their children if anything ever happened, came down to it. Well, would you live for them though?
Exactly. Oh, that's such a good point. Absolutely. And that's one of the things I talk to parents about is that when you begin this process of self-care and demonstrating that, you're role modeling something very very important to your children.
Right.
Yeah.
So
this is why it's so fun to watch your brother and his family. They know how to have a good time. They know how to lift each other up.
Yeah.
They know how to be in the moment with one another.
Yeah.
They're role modeling something very important to the world.
Yeah, they're precious.
And those babies, they're getting really good parenting juju.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
But he's really, really conscious about his choices and how to be a great parent. And
as it should be. We have to have a driver's license to drive a car. We should have a license for parents.
I mean, seriously, look at the time that we invest in sports or in our careers or learning a new task or, whatever. I mean, do the same for parenting. It's not just everybody says, well, we don't have a manual. Well, no, but you can make a conscious effort to be a good parent. And
and to learn something about child development and what your kid needs at what age and
how you're affecting them.
Those are basics, man.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My opinion.
I love it. I love it. Anything that you that we haven't covered today that you would coming to mind that you want to share, that you want to offer?
One of the things that I will say about the patterns of deletion is that, if you are in a relationship with someone who tends to have those darker thoughts, you want to look for ways to support them that does not judge them. Okay. You want to give a person like that a list. This would be the same for someone who's grieving. People don't, they say, if you need anything, just please call. I don't know what I need.
Yes,
they can't ask for help.
I just texted this back to a friend of mine who reached out recently about their grandmother going through dementia and how it was really difficult that she had her grandmother and aunt live right next door. So her aunts, she's always kind of been there, but now really taking on the caretaker role. And she was just expressing how just difficult it is to even accept that her grandmother's going through this because she was such an amazing woman. And anyways, she was like, if my aunt would just ask for help. And I'm like, sometimes people don't know how to ask for help.
They don't.
I'm
They
a
don't.
person of like, I never asked for help because one, I didn't need it. I prided myself on being a person that could handle things, and I
Yeah.
can. We all can. We don't realize how much we can handle, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like, we need to ask for help whenever we need it, but we don't know how. We don't know
That's
how to
exactly
do
right.
that. And I
That's
think that
exactly
that's
right.
maybe sometimes part of the reason why people don't even seek out therapy or even confide in someone about something that they're dealing with. For one, they don't want to be judged, but they just don't even have the words for
Yeah.
what they're dealing with, and
Yeah.
even know themselves. They probably haven't even sat with themselves long enough to reflect on where they're at. Am I active? Am I just having depressive thoughts? Or, do I just simply need to change a food coloring in my diet that may help
Yeah.
with?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a real deal.
Yeah,
There's lots of products in our foods that are banned in other countries, and that's
right.
something to think about and look at. you
How
know
all the different
and
things
here's
of our
something else
environment.
that I'll bring up that is a bit controversial, and that is the programming on this planet. And what I have, what we've known for a long, long time, and what's really been ramped up lately is the frequencies around depression and violent thoughts and what feels like delusional thoughts are actually frequencies that people are picking up on, and they believe that it's their own.
Yeah.
They believe they're being hit with another wave of depression. They believe that they're seeing and hearing things that aren't really there, and now they're at the psychiatrist office getting meds for antipsychotics when it's a psychic warfare.
Yeah.
And so being more and more and more connected to yourself and in tune with who you are, spending time in the present moment, being grounded and centered, that stuff doesn't get in. You recognize it immediately.
Right, right.
And to return to sender with pica is what you say.
So, assessing the time that you spend on your thoughts, on the environment, what you're consuming, what kind of content you're bringing in, whether you're watching shows that are violent or conspiracy theories, or, a lot of times people have difficulty accepting just weird things that are going on in the world. I mean, all of these things that you feel like maybe are not really affecting you, they're just really innocent. They don't realize the toll that they take on your overall. To give an example, when I was in Germany, I was going through hormone suppressant therapy then for endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome, and was just so many things. And I remember my husband traveled a lot at the time, so it was mostly just me and my young daughter that was in grade school, and I would get up in the morning. I had a photography business then, and I kept a little boy also. So on the days that I didn't have him, I would edit photos all day. And so I would get up in the morning and I would turn the news on, because that's all that we really had that was real time over there. Everything was multiple days delayed reruns, right? So the only real time anything network, anything broadcasting that you got over there. And at the time, you'd still, I mean, maybe some blogs and a few things online, but there wasn't a whole lot, you know what I mean? So anyways,
Right.
I would get up in the morning to know, be informed what's going on in the world, especially we're overseas. You got to be aware, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started experiencing so many, well, actually with infertility, I came back from a surgery in the States and woke up, went to sleep thinking that everything was going to be great. We're going to get everything figured out, and we were going to move on from there. And then it was devastating news that I woke up to. Well, I had booked a lot of babies and bellies and families and all these things to come back to after the holidays. I did the surgery over Christmas, visiting family, all that. And wow, the toll that took on
What
me
a
to have to
devastation. Bless
deal
your
with
heart.
my infertility and have that just in my face,
Mm.
bombarding me all day long, every day. And when I wasn't actually taking the pictures and interacting with the families, I was having to edit it and see the love and all the things, right? And so I was listening to all the negativity from the news, and oh my gosh, my relationship was terrible, like all the things. And at that point, I was like, okay, there is the only thing that I can control right now that's going on in my life is the negative stuff that I can control. So I immediately turned the news off. That was the
Good
first
job.
thing that I did. And that's actually the last time that I pretty much have watched any kind of show or TV or anything. And that was back in 2008. So that alone has made a huge impact in my overall way that I feel every day. But again, that self-care, that putting myself first, those daily routines, and it doesn't have to be anything like, I'm not trying to run a marathon here. I'm not training for a marathon. I'm literally just trying to be at peace with the thoughts that I have and realize that it doesn't have to be a fight or flight moment.
Yes.
Even though I'm having a thought.
Yes.
And realizing, okay, what in my environment has been going on that could be impacting this? Is it something that I'm eating? When is the last time I was out in nature? When was the last time I grounded my feet in the earth? All of those kinds of things that I can do naturally to help my well-being.
And all of those things are what you do to stay self-aware. And that's the key to the universe. Self-aware and self-love. Unconditional self-love.
Yeah.
And we talked about getting rid of negative thoughts. Your negative thoughts are representations of the wounded parts of you that need your love and attention.
There you go.
You can think of it in one genre of therapy. They refer to these as your exiled ones, but it's every single time you've been harmed in some way, especially traumatically. And so when those negative thoughts come up, you want to sit with it. You want to be in the moment with it and recognize it is a younger version of you. And it doesn't matter if it was yesterday's you or if it was you at 2 years old. It's a younger version of you that needs love and attention because it's wounded. And you do just that. You sit with that pain. You recognize it. Do you have any memories that come around that match that feeling? If so, do you need a therapist to work through some of that? Can you get a journal and journal through some of that?
Okay, yeah. Elaborate on that, because this is doing that dark work.
Doing
this is
the dark work.
Working through those feelings, as is processing in a healthy manner. These kinds of things that everyone is so scared of, because it is. You don't want to relive that again. No. You don't want to all the things, feel all of that again. There's no way. No, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to relive it again. So,
right.
But what we don't realize
is that you are reliving it.
Every day.
It stays recorded and downloaded into your system. So the working through it is the releasing of it. It's the freedom that comes.
There you go.
So if you sit down with your journal and you're just reflecting, you're free writing, you're not worried about spelling or punctuation, you're just writing and allowing yourself to feel the emotions and remember the memories and love on that younger version of yourself. And when those thoughts come up and they're, negative thoughts that don't feel like yours, you say, I choose not to think that way anymore. If there's a belief system that doesn't serve you anymore, I choose not to think that way anymore.
I come out of agreement with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a technique by Louise Hay, Receiving Prosperity.
Yeah.
I've talked about this ex-boyfriend of mine and how I'm done with thinking about him. But there's a habitual thing that's going on. Your brain gets addicted to the chemicals that you're thinking about all the time, the chemicals you're producing by thinking. And so he pops into my mind. I choose not to think about this man anymore. And I visualize him walking away from me out of my life. Eventually, I will prune away those neural networks because I'm staying in the moment with myself. I'm present. I know where I am emotionally, and I'm telling my brain to dump that.
You're rewiring those brain synapses.
That's exactly right.
Synapses, however way.
Yeah. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So when you start pruning them, you're telling your brain, we don't think this way anymore. And your brain follows what you're thinking. And then you begin to create new neural pathways that will create a more cohesive neural network.
That's why affirmations are so effective.
Oh, yes.
It's like writing your spelling words multiple times.
Absolutely.
It's the same type of thing. You're training your brain. You're rewiring your brain.
Absolutely.
There was one other.
Paying attention to your emotions is very important.
Right. Mm-hmm. Self-regulation, compartmentalization. Okay, now's not the time for me to respond to this. Let me wait until, and even in the heat of a moment of a conversation, sometimes, like I've had to I've had difficult conversations again with people that are suicidal. Even sometimes they're even like angry and having passionate conversations about things with them. And
in thinking about those negative thoughts and beliefs, you've got to train your brain. It's
compartmentalization and saying, okay, pause. We've got to wait a little bit. We're going to have to, let's take a break. Let's do put that away, shut the lid. Come back to when it's healthy. We're both in a healthier space to be able to have a healthy conversation, healthy debate, those kinds of things. We've talked about that. That's a whole other podcast. Okay. Well, we are pretty close to about an hour in, and I know we could sit here for 12 more.
Yes, we could.
But that'll just be another episode.
Yes, it will.
I love it. Okay, any closing, anything coming to mind?
Well, I was beginning to talk a little bit about, your friends. If you start seeing their behavior change, if they seem a little more gloomy, they're turning down your invitations, they are kind of gloomy, listless, no energy, fatigued, and you're seeing those signs of depression, you could be looking at something that could go worse if you're not careful. So there's always the, national hotlines. You may look those up. 211 in our local area will give you resource information. But just, check in with your loved ones and just hold space for people to be open and honest about what they're going through. And if you find that someone you're close to is acting a little different, just offer some love, offer some companionship, and offer some resources.
Again, I think this could probably be a whole other episode, but I do want to, we talk a little bit about demographics, and we did talk about that in previous episodes with the bro session. You guys go back and check those out. But I want to talk about suicide in kids real quick.
Oh.
And like, as a parent, what can we proactively do? Like, to me, I know what's helped, and maybe it wasn't always the most, like substance. Sometimes we were just sitting there and in silence, you know what I mean, at the dinner table. But on Sunday dinner, my grandparents, I was so fortunate to grow up right next door to them on our farm. And my grandparents, my grandmother did Sunday dinner for our entire family, not just like their children, grandkids, our cousins, aunts, uncles, friends, everybody came on Sunday afternoon for dinner, you know what I mean? And if they weren't there for dinner, they'd see us all out there on the porch, and they're driving by and they'd stop in for a visit afterwards. Or, it was just incredible.
Yeah, that's preciousness.
So thankfully my mom and dad have continued on that tradition, and I mean, gosh, just the expense, especially this day and age, to provide a meal for a family of, especially ours. Gosh, we have so many.
Yeah,
how are we going to do it when all the kids are teenagers, right?
Yes, and those teenage boys can put the food away.
Yes, but that is one thing that I think has really helped. Just having a designated family time. My niece and nephew, their dad, it's split family, but when they're on their dad's week, they have no cell phone Sundays. So there are days that my sister can't even get a hold of her own kids on Sundays because it's a no cell phone Sunday. They do family stuff that day. And I think that's fantastic.
I love it. That's fantastic.
So just, is there anything specific that we can do, offer to encourage parents that to, signs, what to do with, I know bullying is huge. I've experienced that in our own family with my nephew. He was bullied a lot at school, and then he started having suicidal thoughts, and,
Yes.
So what can we offer parents?
Parents, you've got to stay connected to your kids. It is absolutely crucial that you spend one-on-one time with them on a very consistent, very regular basis. I spent 6.5 years working exclusively with foster children. And the one primary complaint I would hear is that I don't think my parents care or my mom cares because I didn't have any rules. I'm able, I can go and do as I please and do what I want to do. And so I just really don't think she cares. Well, that
sure is interesting.
Yes.
So all the kids with rules don't want rules, but the kids without rules feel like they don't care about them.
Right. I can explain that. Children thrive on rules, and they know that they do. But the moment you impose a rule and put your fence up, they're going to push against that fence. And what are they doing? They're testing the strength of the fence. Is this fence tight enough to hold me?
Can I
Am
trust
I really
it?
safe?
Yeah.
And if the fence holds and the parent holds the boundary, then they can relax, let their hair down, and feel safe. So you show me a kid who's out of control and misbehaving, and I'll show you some parents who need some intervention.
Just like pets.
Just
They
like
say
pets.
literally, you're not training the pet, you're training the owner.
That's exactly right. And so when the parents are able to get on board with each other in a parenting plan that's positive, uplifting, yet very effective. I love Gary
United.
Landreth's Choices, Cookies, and Kids. Then these kids know where their rock is. I know of a horrifying case, and it's just one example of many, 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 many cases where mom and dad discovered that their 14-year-old daughter was prostituting herself online, selling risque pictures of herself
Are
on
you
one
serious
of those.
right now?
Yeah, no, it's one of those OnlyFans things. I don't know how she managed to do it.
This is a personal story. This isn't just something you hear on the movies.
Yeah, no, this is a case, not one of mine, but a case. And now this girl would change her clothes, and she would be one way with the family. She was a straight A student, very popular, known as kind of a goody two-shoes. But behind closed doors, she was wearing fishnet stockings and lingerie and posing in front of the camera and selling her pictures.
Well, first of all, she has way too much alone time. Unsupervised.
That's exactly right. That's your first thought, because where are these parents?
Yeah.
Why don't you know what's happening
How does
at
she
the
have
top
time
of the
for that?
stairs? How does she have time for that? Don't you have her in a sport or an activity?
Something.
Where is the dinner table time?
Yeah.
Right? Where's movie night? Where is mom time and dad time? You build in individual time with your babies, and you stay connected to them. They're much less likely to get themselves into trouble, to become depressed, to not be able to say anything to you about what's going on. And yes, suicide, deletion is one of the options that they go to, because they just want it to all stop.
Yeah. And
right?
It's now a thing because
And
it's
then
so
when-
prevalent
yeah.
in society. It wasn't years ago, one wasn't talked about. And if it happened, you didn't say why or that was the
Yeah.
cause. And
Yeah.
now it's all over everywhere. There are shows made about it. And it's an option to children now.
Well, and again, back to the permission thing. When you've got a population of children, let's say in a, middle school ages are very at risk, along with your high schoolers. But someone, deletes themselves, then that becomes a mentality that can be adopted by everybody in that school.
Yeah.
And you'll start seeing a trend of more deletions
Yeah.
around those.
Right.
And that's why it's like, well, that's an option, and obviously it works. And when you're talking about the children, look at the attention that the family and the victim get during the funeral process and the wake.
You just read my mind.
Yeah, and all of the attention and the mourning and the love that's poured out
and
onto
people
a family.
that aren't loved well and aren't healthy already will see that as an option, and you'll see that.
See, I want that.
That is,
I want that love.
Yeah.
I want to be surrounded by that, but they're not putting it together, that you're not going to be anywhere near there unless you're floating in the ether from the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they just don't have the concrete thinking a lot of times to get there.
How about bullying? I mean, again, all of these could be an episode on their own, but let's real quick touch on bullying and what can we do as a parent. I actually have a friend that's going through this right now with their daughter. She has been bullied for years. She's only 13 years old. She's in a small town. She's much taller, much more developed. And she's the sweetest thing, and she has been bullied for years, and she recently has been very heavily bullied, and I don't want to give all the details, but problem going on in the school system. She was expelled. They finally got that expunged. She was the one being bullied because she made a comment, and this is on record of bullied for years and asking for help and nothing being done, and she makes a comment and gets expelled. And now they had to go through lawyer, all this to get it expunged from her record. And now they've said that she could come back to school, but they don't even want to, of course, after this treatment.
Sure.
So what can a parent do when a child is being bullied? Like I went through this with my nephew as well. I mean, there seems to be no resource, nothing that can be done for kids that are being bullied.
That's the saddest thing about the whole scenario. But I will tell you, it goes right back to being connected to your kids. I am reminded of a study that was done way back into the 90s, looking at attachment styles, okay, and the connection between folks. It was actually a marriage and family training. But anyway, so the study was they took a huge group of women. I don't remember the numbers involved. 50% of the women, what they did was they brought everybody together in one central place, and they told them, you're going to be going through an MRI machine. And when you see the green light come on at the top of the machine, you're going to receive a shock at the bottom of your foot. And then at the end, we're going to do a post review and interview you and find out what you experienced. So the first group was allowed to go through, or the first group was sent through the MRI machine with no one with them. They were completely alone in the room. The second group went through, and they were in there with a technician or a nurse of some sort. And then the third group was allowed to take a loved one, a partner or a spouse. So the first group reported excruciating pain. The second group said that there was moderate pain. And the third group said that it was no big deal. Everybody received the same level of shock on the bottom of their foot. What that study shows us is that when we feel bonded to another human being and together with someone, partnered with someone that we care about, we feel like we can face the world.
Yeah.
But when we are alone, the fear factor of simply being alone makes everything excruciatingly painful. So back to the kids who are suffering. If they are not alone because their parents are connected to them, that could be the game changer that keeps them from going into deletion mode.
Yeah.
And then advocate. And if necessary, move your kid, get them transferred out of there, or start homeschooling, or a combination of all of the above, because that by itself can be more damaging. It's chronic trauma. We talked about not being able to ask for help. Would you like to know why? It's a trauma response. If I'm ultra independent and I don't need to ask for your help, then I'm not going to be let down when you don't give it to me, or when you let me down, or you don't show up. This is why you've got those of us who are at the trunk of the car, and we've got 14 bags, Walmart bags on each arm, and a couple around our neck.
Yeah.
And God forbid we make 2 trips.
Yeah.
And I don't need your help. I will open the door myself. That was the hard part about this last man that I dated. He was the gentleman. He was the chivalrous one. He wanted to open the doors. It was awkward as all get out.
Every time, because you're not used to
we're
something like that.
I'm waiting on this man to walk around the car to open the door.
When I can just do it real quickly.
Just do it right.
More efficient. We just get in.
I would be a couple of steps ahead of him, headed to the restaurant, and I'd have to wait that second or two for him to open the door.
Yeah. But it is so nice.
But it is very nice. It didn't take me long to get used to it.
So I wanted us to offer a couple of, what would we call it, maybe coping skills, like actionable things that you could do right now that might make a difference today with your kids. One of the things that was really effective with my daughter growing up when she was a teen, some of the most challenging times to get information out of your kids and connect with them, right? And she's definitely an introvert. I am definitely an introvert. And so there were, days that we would hardly say anything, other than I love you and, have a good day and, that kind of stuff. And she was a good kid and I didn't worry about her and that kind of stuff. But she did deal with bullying and things like that. She's mixed race, so we were in a small town, and so she definitely dealt with some prejudice and, racism, well, all the things. And she's beautiful and sweet again, that kind of thing, which I'm the exact opposite of soft-hearted, I guess, like that. You know what I mean? I think it was just growing up on the farm. It was survival. I had to be spicy and defiant, and
Right.
because there were multiple instances of life-threatening and or abuse, just with, just the circumstances of the way that I grew up around a bunch of boys and different things like that. And we were of the generation that you got locked outside and you were fend for yourself all day long, and, different things like that. So getting back to, connecting with Justice, my daughter, it seemed like organically the easiest way to talk with her, to get, have a good conversation, that kind of stuff, was always in the car. Anytime we were in a car ride, that helped so much. Yeah. But yeah, I think you just have to, just like, when it comes to disciplining your kid, I tell people all the time, I had a completely different experience. I'm the first to admit that. My experience of parenting was blissful. She was the best kid. I used to tell her all the time she made me hate other children because she was so perfect. I mean, she was just so enjoyable in so many ways, in every way. I mean, she was just a joy all the time, every day, just amazing. You know what I mean? When she did become a teen and that's when I started noticing things. We started having a little bit of trouble, and I did end up taking her out and homeschooling her. And that was back before it was a trend and everybody thought I was absolutely nuts. How's she going to be able to be an adult and be out in the world and, all that kind of stuff. Right. But one of the things, not to get too far off the subject, one of the things that I did was opened a coffee shop right about the same time. And so she did get interaction, not just with absolute jerk peers. She got real world interaction with people and life skills. You know what I mean? So, so I feel really good about that decision. But when I did start noticing some behavioral issues, it didn't really matter. Like, I could ground her from her phone. It didn't matter because she read. She could entertain herself. She spent hours on the road entertaining herself all the way to DC before it was like, portable DVD and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Just coloring and whatever. So she's always been content like that. But it was trying to figure out, okay, well, what motivates her? That's what I had to figure out, what motivated her to really make the impact that I was, because it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter. I said, she was grounded. She couldn't see her friends. She couldn't do electronics. She couldn't watch TV, whatever. That didn't bother her a bit. But when I took her makeup away, that is what did it. So you have to figure out what motivates them. And yeah. So anyways, just that, I think, is one thing when we were talking about, connecting with our kids. It's really, really hard to do that, especially as teens. And I think too, like, I can think back to growing up. I would sit and listen to my dad. I would call them lectures back then. It was always pretty much the same message, and it was always about being your best self, about being a leader, about you always have somebody watching you. Is this your best? You're either here or you're here. You're never here. You're never stagnant. You're never staying the same. You're always either improving or getting worse. So you got to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. You're protecting all of those kind of things so that you're continuing to be the best person that you can be, to set the great example for your young brother and sister. That was the message, you know what I mean? Which is not a bad message. Not a bad message at all. In and of itself. Yeah. But I guess my point is, even when you're not getting much back from them, you're getting those one-word answers or that kind of thing. I guess that was a skill I had to learn too, is how to answer questions that were open-ended so that she would elaborate rather than a yes or no answer. Right. That's a sales technique that you learn as well. So anyways, Again, just figuring out what motivates them, and even though they may not be responding and you think that maybe they're not actually, maybe you're just annoying the shit out of them and they just want you to stop. Well, don't stop, because the message is important. And number one, going back to, they actually care about me, you know what I mean? They're actually taking the time
they really do want the structure.
Right.
They want boundaries.
Right.
Because they don't feel safe otherwise, and they're going to push the boundaries in. Those parents who are way too lax and letting the boundary down, that is what causes fear and anxiety in youngsters.
Yeah. So figure out how to connect with them. Explore different ways. Maybe it's going to Topgolf. Maybe it's doing putt-putt. Maybe it's whatever. Maybe it's golfing and having them ride in the cart and drive the cart with you. Whatever your interest is. If you're able to include them in any way, do that. Get that one-on-one time with them.
Absolutely.
So that you can, my brother's really good about that. He actually reached out to my mom and dad recently and asked them to watch the younger two so that he could spend quality time with Leon as a family. So it was just them. The older, it was Peyton, the older one, she's 15 now, and then Leon, who's 8, and then mom and dad, and they spent an entire day just playing video games and whatever they wanted to do, just the 4 of them, just an adult kind of day, a big day, big kid day, just doing, yeah. So cool. I think it's really, along with that self-care we were talking about earlier, it's really important to, schedule dates with your kids and give them that individual one-on-one time. I was great, very fortunate to have the one that I did. And I think, there's good and bad things to go with both of, having more children and only having one. But I definitely did have so much time with that one-on-one time. And even before she and I were able to do that, we kind of flip-flopped. When we first got her, we adopted her, by the way. She was our niece first, and then we had the opportunity to adopt her when she was 4, and that's when we moved to the East Coast, and I started working full-time and was working 80, 90 hours a week, so she was full-time with him for the most part. They got to really, really develop their relationship, which was great because she didn't have a father figure. And I was her 3rd mom. You know what I mean? Right. So I worked and really developed my career in photography and stuff. And it was all just, out of survival. But thankfully, at that moment, I had the opportunity when we first moved there that was the first time, I'm just realizing as I'm talking about it, that was the first time I started getting real strategic about what I wanted to do as far as my career goes. I had kind of gone with the flow of whatever opportunity came my way and floated around from, I started out waiting tables, and then I got into doing collections at a small car lot. And then I got into doing accounts receivable at a ophthalmology office. And then I started from there, went into verifying their credentials and making sure that they had the coverage for the surgeries and scheduling them and, all that kind of thing. And then from there, basically after that, we moved to DC, and that was the opportunity for me to, okay, well, what kind of job do I want to do next? I didn't have any connections. I didn't have something already lined up to go on. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, we're starting over fresh. What do I want to do next? And I had kind of explored my artistic side in college and taken a black and white photography class and a Photoshop 1 class. I think it was like the first version of Photoshop or something. I'll have to look it up, but it was, one of the very first anyway. Introduction to Photoshop class, basically. And from there, I just decided, well, I'd really like to continue this creative thing and see if I can, go into business for myself and that kind of thing. So I went in as just fulfilling orders, just packaging photography orders and shipping them out, and then got into editing and then photography myself, being the photographer, the lead photographer, and then answered an ad to get into wedding work and blah, blah, blah. So that was the first time that I really got strategic about what I wanted to do with next move kind of type thing, and it really worked out. It's supported me throughout. I mean, that was 25. That was almost 20 years ago.
And what do you think about the way you were raised? How did that influence your success as an adult?
Well, so many ways come to mind. Um, Definitely my gosh. Well, it starts with, the service industry and my ability to anticipate needs, okay? But that is actually in addition to photography and, graphic design and editing, how that has helped me throughout my career. Just anticipating needs has helped me throughout my career as well, but also relationships and, everything. That also kind of makes me a little bit of an OCD freak and people pleaser. And not really people. It comes from, yeah, that part of the, is this your best? Have bringing home A's? Is this your best?
Yeah. Yeah.
It comes from, I was 5 years older than my brother and sister, and my dad worked out of town a lot. So I was that other person to help in the household. And so I don't know, somehow, probably working on the farm. Oh, I know. I mean, my grandparents were all just masters at their crafts. And so my mother's mom was my mama. We just lost her this May, but she was the most amazing seamstress you will ever come across in your whole life. I mean, you can literally just describe, hey, I want this, and she literally will produce it. I mean, and it's just even better than you ever imagined.
My mother could look at a pattern or see a dress in the window, sit down with newspaper and cut out a pattern and make the same dress.
Yeah.
It was an astonishing skill.
Yeah, and just incredible level. My other grandmother she was a quilter and a painter, and then they were the gardeners and the farmers too. So I learned all of those life skills from them because we grew up right next to them. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
And they're, when you plant a football field size garden every year, then you get real strategic and real, very OCD about the way that you do things, and you find the most efficient ways because you're trying to, eliminate waste and those kind of things. So gosh, my ability to strategically plan in the business world it comes from that. It was literally ingrained for me I was literally a barefoot kid, toddler running through the garden.
Yeah.
And that was every single time it was done, we were right there doing it. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That was your lifestyle.
Yeah, and then the chores. I mean, every single day we did the exact same thing in the exact same sequence, because that was the most efficient way to do it. And, so it was literally that, yeah.
Yes.
So all of those things. And it's funny to look back on all of that because sometimes, you can focus on the wrong thing and you think, oh my God, I hate these chores again or whatever. And then you look back and you're like, wow. All of that goes into the whole package of all of the skill set and ability and confidence and that kind of thing, and I think that's probably why that I was never bullied either. And then I also went through a very there was a period of time when I was younger that I was bullied because I was very olive oil was my nickname. I was very, very thin. I looked like an Ethiopian child as like growing up. I was very, very thin, very lanky. I wasn't malnourished. I was just grew up on the farm. I was busy all the time and ate vegetables, and we raised all of our own everything. So everything was quality, and I was definitely not obese in any way. We were hardcore athletes. We were very competitive, and that was on our own. God, I got off the bus every day wrestling my stupid cousin that lived on the other side of my grandparents. That's a brother to me. He was my older brother. It was just him and I growing up.
Right.
So that's where my competitive comes from, is he was also a very competitive athlete, but so were our aunts and uncles and our parents. Everyone has been a very competitive athlete. So it's just, all of that goes into.
Yes, and it sounds like you had support along the way, and that it's that connection
so
for
much.
children that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And there's even if trauma enters the situation, if a child can be attached to a secure adult, and have that security or that foundation, it is an absolute game changer. And back to ultra independence and not being able to ask for help. Not being able to ask for help is a trauma response.
Right.
Because if I can figure out how to meet everybody's needs and keep all the balloons in the air, then I got it going on. And that goes right back to that, what is that called? The swan theory?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I call it. Yeah, yeah. I use that all the time.
Smooth as silk on top.
Yeah, yeah. And I've practiced that my whole life. I mean, yes, growing up in a very chaotic environment, parents were young. We're all young and we don't know. Louise Hay, you've taught me this. We have to forgive our parents for things. We're all just learning as we go. But it's that remaining calm, that compartmentalizing, that being able to remain calm in chaos.
Yes.
Was from day one, with growing up on the farm and the animals everywhere and kids everywhere and the things and yeah, and having so much responsibility at such a young age. So it's helped me be successful in so many different ways, and it helps so much in parenting too. I understood the meaning of tough love, and thankfully I didn't really have to display that a lot with Justice, but it is so important, and I do totally agree. I mean, kids thrive in structure, and she absolutely did. Absolutely. I mean, we saw it every time. And part of it was just the history and the emotionality of it all. But anytime she would go visit her grandmother and she would come back, and it was like, oh gosh, a couple of days of getting back into our attitude, our routine, our outlook, our everything. Like,
yes, I hear that a lot from families.
Yeah, it's hard.
Very.
Yeah, that was the hardest part, I think, about the hardest part about raising an adopted child was something else. But the hardest part about raising an adopted child that was still involved with their family, their previous family.
And had been quite abused.
Yes, the hardest part of that was the letting them go back to that environment because you wanted to continue that relationship. But the effects of that also. The effects of not and the effects of doing. But the hardest part of raising an adopted child was overcoming her profound, deep connection to how she came into the world.
Oh.
And how she let that define who she was. It was a hindrance, big time. It was something that we had to work on so often. You know what I mean?
It is one of the most difficult.
Yeah.
Things. As a matter of fact, I have someone on my caseload, and it's dang near impossible for them to let go of that.
It's really, really hard.
I mean, and she's done such good work, and has come so far. But when we start touching on that little piece of the puzzle,
yeah,
there's just no going.
Thankfully, with your guidance too, like I haven't always been a person that talked about my feelings or things, and you have helped me big time realize how important that is. And thank God I met you early on. Justice was about 13, 14. And so, while that's not true. I've always talked about my feelings and things when I feel comfortable enough to do, safe enough to do that, right?
Right.
And I've always been a huge advocate about using my story to help others, right? As well as help them learn how to be an advocate for themselves. So we always did, I always tried my best to be a conscious parent, but I'm grateful that I did come into a lot of the realizations that I did when I did, because I think I did start talking at it. Well, she facilitated the whole thing. My goodness, she was 5 years old. We were on our way to daycare, and she was asking me how babies, like we had that conversation. And she said something about, gosh, it's been a while since I've told the story now. I used to tell it all the time, but something about, well, I heard you could have a baby without having sex. First of all, why are we 5 years old knowing about sex? But at this point, we're living in DC, and things are so different there. Kids. Well, I mean, at nap time, the kids are reenacting a 69. Yes. It's just insanity at 5 years old. So, all the things. So this is where she hears this at school about you can have a baby without having sex. And already knew what sex was. So, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I guess, yep, nowadays you absolutely can. You can go to a doctor and he can take the eggs from the mommy and the sperm from the daddy and puts them together and puts them back in the mommy's tummy, blah, 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 all the things, right? And she's like, well, how do you get the eggs? And so we go into that conversation. And then how do we get the sperm? And I'm like, I think at this point we probably should call in some reinforcement. There's got to be a book out there that could help us. Like, we'll continue this discussion after school. Like, help.
Then you go
help.
into research mode.
Yeah, so there actually was a book, and they were great books. I'm really glad that we got them. I think that it helped normalize a lot of things where it could have been really, really, really distorted given our background.
Parents really struggle with that whole sex talk.
It's hard. Well, because I didn't really get that talk. My mom gave it to all of the other girls on the softball team because they, for some reason, stayed in her room and I stayed in a room with my friend. So I missed all of that. But
that's wild.
Yeah, so that was one of the things I wanted to make sure that was different.
You know what my talk was? She said, have you, pointing with her finger, have you ever let a boy play with those? And pointed to my chest. And of course I had, but I said absolutely not.
Yeah.
And she proceeded to tell me I would be sent to a home for unwed mothers. And that was just not acceptable. When I was in 3rd grade, she gave me a book that said, doctors talk to age 6 to 12, and doctors talk to age 13 to 17 or something like that. And I go up there, up to her, she's cooking, and I asked her, I said, what does intercourse mean? After reading in these books. She goes, didn't you read the book I gave you? I said, yeah, but I don't know what that means. And she just referred me back to the book, and that was it.
Wow. Goodness.
So the connection is so parents are so disconnected from their children, and that is where you're going to lose them. That is where it's dangerous.
So earlier when we were talking about self-deletion and the talking about, okay, where are you at? Trying to assess the situation, where they are, and how to move forward with a plan and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Part of me it's always a choice, no matter what. But in trying to find the right words to help, it makes me nervous to bring those things to light, because am I introducing something they may not be thinking about already and now I've given them a plan? Or, something like that. Am I encouraging in any way, something like that? So I'm wondering, I know I've felt the same about having the discussion with a child. Your child should be the only appropriate. I mean, I guess if you're an aunt or a family member, something like that, as long as it's healthy, right? Professional, right. However you say that. But sometimes having those discussions that you might be opening a door, giving off the impression that you might be condoning the behavior or those choices or something too early, for their age appropriate or whatever, right. That kind of thing. So I think sometimes that's a reason why parents are maybe, what is that called? Resistant to having those kinds of discussions. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, my gosh, I would so much rather my child be able to make an informed decision and the right information from an informed parent or professional rather than information from peers, which is what I got growing up. You know what I mean? Same. I feel like I probably would have made choices a lot differently. I mean, we can spend hours on that, but
certainly.
Yeah. So anyways.
Well, what I will say about that is that when parents get resistant, it's all about fear. And you've just got to kind of put that aside and address the situation directly with your kiddos and be open and honest and and make it safe for them to talk to you. This is a wild world out there.
Yeah.
And they need to know that they've got a safe place to turn to.
Well, and this is an opportunity, a coaching moment, an opportunity to instill values and talk about that and the importance of respecting your body and, where these things, these feelings, again, processing emotions in a healthy manner and those kinds of things.
But you also have to, address the safety of things. I mean, Jade was 8 years old, and she found our medical encyclopedias on the bottom of a bookshelf behind a chair somewhere, And so I'm in the tub, and that is one place where a child will have their parent captive and want to talk about life. So she comes in, I'm in the tub, she starts talking to me about sex. Okay, so here's what I will say about talking to children about sex. I hope this gives a sense of relief to parents. If a child, first of all, you want to make it as child-friendly as possible, on their level as possible, but don't lie or make up names or stuff like that.
It's important to use correct terms and normalize the conversation.
Yes, exactly. But what that 8-year-old couldn't really digest mentally, psychologically, cognitively, washes off like water off a duck's back. So you don't have to be so concerned.
Right. Use terms they can understand. Keep it pretty simple.
Keeping it basic and keeping it real, keeping it truthful. And what they don't understand will wash off their back. But she's asking all these questions. I'm answering them at her level. I thought, oh my God, here we go. 8. She's 8. And so she goes and she says, I'll be right back. And I managed to get out of the tub and at least get wrapped in a towel. She comes back with these 2 things, these 2 books, medical encyclopedias. And she's got them bookmarked. One of them's bookmarked to a line drawing of intercourse.
Oh, perfect.
And the other book was bookmarked to a page of a line drawing of birth.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And I said, well, this is exactly what we've been talking about, isn't it? And she slams both books closed and says, I am never having a baby. And she just runs away.
That's typically what happens.
Yeah. Just what is really crucial in all that we have said in regards to the health of children is that parents have to stay connected and keep the lines of communication open with your children. Make it safe for them, with boundaries, of course, but make it safe for them to come to you with anything.
Yeah, and include age-appropriate humor. I mean, that was one thing that I did a lot, too. I want to think that it helped. I mean, I would say things like, we'd talk about when she got older and she's going through women's stuff. And I would be like, that's the first conversation I'll have with that bitch Eve when I get up there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just things like that. Like, just lighten the situation because it is so heavy, that things that we go through, especially at adolescence. Like, gosh, it's so hard to grow up.
Yes, indeed.
It is so many things.
Absolutely.
So, okay, skills, things that we can do, again, right now that can make a huge difference. Is there any kind of, from a therapist, spiritual, coping skills perspective that we can teach before we go?
Yes, there's so many, but I've chosen two to focus on that I think are just very powerful in and of themselves. And the first that I'd like to talk about is the power, the absolute healing power of the breath. It cannot be overstated. So I like to teach box breath. It is an easy concept to learn, and if you follow the structure of it, then it can help you have something that you're focused on to get you centered into the now and calming your system down. So that's why it's so important, when they call it box breath, to do the structure, because it gives you something tangible to do, right? when you are anxious. So box breathing, I literally have children, draw their box in the air, and that will help them. But you breathe in very slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth, very slowly. And then as you inhale, you want to hold briefly, maybe 2 to 3 seconds. Exhale slowly, hold 2-3 seconds. Inhale slowly, hold 2-3 seconds. Exhale slowly, hold 2-3 seconds. And do that 3 to 4 times. That in and of itself can be a micro break for anyone at any time. It's free, and you just need to be aware of it and do it.
I love it. I love holistic things that we can do, that we can apply right now, things that are in our control, that are our own God-given power and ability to regulate our body. And gosh, so many podcast episodes and things that we can discuss, but I can't wait to do those in the future.
Yes.
Is there one last thing, anything else?
Yes, ma'am. So this is another God-given skill that you can learn that is beyond powerful, and that is called head-heart cohesion. This is about bringing your head and your heart into cohesion for the sole purpose of calming your system down and initiating health. So here's how it works. It's just as simple as it could be. Every human being is born with 40,000 sensory neurite cells in the heart. And what that translates to, quite literally, is that you have a miniature brain center in the middle of your heart. And so your heart thinks, feels, and communicates separate from the big brain in the head. And it's got its own system. It's got its own hormones. It's got its own neurons. Its own complete network. So as you focus on things that you're grateful for, and putting your left hand on your heart, the moment you touch your heart, and your left hand is a much better connection than your right hand, but both would work. But you put your left hand on your heart, your consciousness is now shifted to your heart brain, and you are now working out of that brain, okay? And as you focus on things that you are grateful for, you're initiating serotonin and dopamine, and it brings a sense of joy and a sense of gratitude, which then the chemistry is working, your brain chemistry. And that is also an indication that your brain and your heart, pardon me, are coming into coherence. You can actually purchase equipment to watch this happen. This information comes from heartmath.com. So, as you sit there focusing on the thing that you're grateful for and allowing that feeling to just move through you, after 5 solid minutes, your brain will release over 1,300 biochemical processes that are healing and anti-aging hormones. It's also a super boost to your SIGA immune system, which is your first line of defense and the largest part of your immune system. This effect lasts 6+ hours, meaning that the average time was 6 hours. Many people went beyond 6 hours. So studies show after time that this method is shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression, and it also promotes healing if you are ill. Boosts your immune system if you are healthy. What boosts your immune system anyway? So you can go to my TikTok, Regina Roche Consulting, and I have a TikTok on there. It's the one TikTok that's got the most views. It's 1,400 and some odd views, and it's down at the bottom. And it explains this whole technique, from beginning to end. If there's any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great.
You're so welcome.
So again, so you put your hand on your heart and you begin thinking about all of the things that you're grateful for.
Yes. And, during tough times, you're going through a storm. It can be really difficult to find something that you're grateful for. And so it can be one thing. It can be the smallest thing. Thank you for my head of hair, because having no hair would be an issue. Thank you.
Or it would be a blessing.
Or it can be a blessing. Thank you for, my life and the ability to discern my needs and learn and grow as a human. Thank you for my home. Thank you for my job, my income. Thank you for my pet, my children, my grandchildren. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate list.
Awesome.
Any place is a good starting place.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You are welcome so much.
I love you so much.
I love you so much. I'm just very happy to be of service.
So grateful. Grateful for our time. Grateful for our friendship.
Me too.
Sisterhood. Okay, well, that wraps up our first episode.
That's a wrap.
That is great. Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
It's been a blast.
This has. Okay, so one more time, we can find you at Regina Roche Consulting on all social media.
Yes, Regina Roche Consulting, and my website is reginarocheconsulting.com. Great.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay. We are, that's a wrap. We definitely have planned to do absolutely more of these. Like I said, we've mentioned multiple times, multiple different episodes that we could elaborate on. So definitely check back for more. I don't know, what should we call our sessions? I mean, I've got the bro sessions episodes with my brother. I've got, just it's random thoughts, some usefuls, the overall, like, that's the name of the podcast. Yeah. I don't know. We'll come up with something, but
yeah, we will. We'll have the right idea somewhere.
I love it. Okay. All right. Thank you, Miss Jill. Thank you.